on the WEA's Neudorfer paper. So as I took the key argument here, is that municipal robustness, as you call it, conditions the role of these like key theorized things that we think shape new infrastructure investment. Right? So I like this paper a lot because it's a very straightforwardly empirical paper, right? And I mean that as a compliment. Like, I think a lot of the maladies in empirical political science is this like tendency we have to think that like every paper has to have a novel theory, right? I would like to see a lot more papers that are just like, this is empirical. We want to know if this thing that we think is true, right? And lots of like testing and retesting, right? Good science of these ideas that we have out in the world. Okay? So since this paper, at least as I understand it, is just like straightforwardly empirical, I'm going to focus entirely on the empirical stuff, because when you're doing a straightforwardly empirical paper, then the data and the model and everything matter quite a lot. And I have 4 key like questions and things I would want to see going forward. Like if I was going to get this as a peer review, these are sorts of things that I would ask for. So one thing is that the models you present are extremely complex. They have a ton of variables. So they're very high-dimensional models that I am reasonably confident no one else can actually wrap their mind around the entire model. And the first couple of models have like 22 interaction terms, right? These are very, very complicated models. You talk in the paper about the marginal effects, but I want to see them for reasons I'll talk about in just a second. Because all of your key hypotheses are about these conditional relationships, and you operationalize this with interaction terms and near models, it's really important to validate those interactions empirically. And then the question at the end about standard errors. Okay, so really complex models like this, like there are lots of risks to having really complex models, right? Complex models with observational data can introduce all sorts of biases, particularly polite bias is a particularly significant concern. So I wonder if you can estimate much simpler models and like maybe take like a stepwise approach where you just we test the different conditional relationships one at a time, right? And then you can construct like the full model if you want, but I think you want to make sure that the relationships that you observe in the argument paper are there like more minimally specified models before relying on this like huge model that has like 100 variables in it. So you can discuss the marginal effects in the paper, but I want to see the marginal effects. Right? We know from Brammer et al. That the raw interaction term that you report in the table isn't like almost ever meaningful. But then like the marginal effect that you estimate for a given location also isn't necessarily meaningful. What we need to know is if the marginal change across the range of the moderator is statistically meaningful. And I think that's like almost always easiest to get at with marginal effects plots. And those are easily implemented in Stata with some native, with this native margins and margins plot packages. And then you can put the big tables in the appendix and just show us that these key things that you care about matter in the ways that you expect, or whatever the case may be. The related thing about the interactions is recent work by Hainmuller et al. Showed that while interaction terms in linear models are like one of the most common approaches to doing empirical research in the social sciences, they rely on these like key assumptions, like key empirical assumptions that are almost never validated in the applied literature. And they replicate like 30 papers out of the top 5 journals, and in about half the cases, those interaction terms, even when as reported marginal effects plots, are actually empirically invalid, right? So like, people are reporting interaction relationships that they think are true, but that aren't actually true. So they show that it's really important to validate these things in a given applied case. So these two assumptions are called common support and linear interaction effect assumptions. And in their paper, which is political analysis a couple of years ago, they have a really nice step-by-step procedure for doing this. And they put together a package for R and Stata called Interflex, where you can do this really easily. And you can also actually generate the marginal effects plots I was just talking about previous with the same package. You don't have to go through do a bunch of stuff. So I would definitely want to see that, since your key argument is about these interactive relationships. Okay. And then the last thing is that you haven't really discussed the standard errors but in a case like this, especially with this complex model and the panel data that you have, the standard errors are super important. So, like, you have regional fixed effects. Seems like you need to cluster your standard errors on region. I'm not sure whether you do or not, but I think you need to. You have municipal level random effects, and I'm just not sure why, so I'd like to see discussion of that. I suspect if you think you have municipal level stuff going on, you need municipal fixed effects also. And then I want to know if the standards that you have are going to be robust to misspecification of the model parts, and whether they're going to be robust to unknown time or space correlations since it's a panel data. Something like hack standard errors or something like that. Yeah, probably hack standard errors might be most appropriate.